I'm Dump Truck DS, and welcome to this new video series called My Workflow. This is my workflow, how I make maps. Everybody maps differently, and there's a million ways you could do things, and I've kind of arrived at this process over the last few years. And so I wanted to share it because when I started out, I had no idea what I was doing or where to start. And I think this video might help beginning mappers get a handle on at least one way that you can follow steps to make a map. So the steps, there are 10 of them, but they also kind of blend in and kind of melt into each other eventually, as you'll see in the video. So the first one is the theme. Second, we have sketch. Third is floors, then walls, gates, gameplay, ceilings, detailing, lighting, and the final step is refining your map. But anyway, if you're an experienced mapper, go ahead and enjoy the video, but you probably have your own methods, and I'd love to hear about them in the comments or at the Quake Mapping Discord. I'd love to hear how people work, and this gives me ideas and things I can learn. So without further ado, here's part one of my workflow. So the very first thing I do when I'm making a map is to choose a theme. And basically what that means is I'm gonna select a set of textures that are just gonna be limited. As I got to know what I was doing, I kind of resisted using the entire id1 WOD. In fact, now when I start a map, I make my own custom WOD. Anyhow, so the theme, the map I'm working on is a speed map, and it's for SM207, which is based on the map Ceremonial Circles. So in this case, the theme is chosen for me. So what I do is I go to that level, especially in this kind of case where it's based on something, it's inspired, this speed map pack is inspired by this level. Well then, I'm gonna take reference and kind of make sure I'm using textures in the proper way so it matches. I'm also looking at shapes, different sizes and shapes of brushes. So I take these reference screenshots and I collect them into PDFs. You don't have to do this, but I highly recommend, just kind of going through and grab some screenshots of things that inspire you. It's really good to have reference for when you get stuck. So there's been many times where I kind of ran out of ideas or didn't know what I wanted to do, and I just kind of fired up some of these PDFs. I have a few of them, even for different games. So this is like Quake 2. So here's the WOD for SM207, I believe. Green would put this together for the speed map event. So I had already created a WOD that was kind of similar to this. It has a lot of the same stuff in it. Not everything. So I'll probably use both of these, even because they are on theme. And of course, you can always open up TextMex like I have here, and you can drag and drop and add things from other WODs. It's not a big deal, but just try to limit yourself. It really helps you stay on theme. It makes it more professional, looking and not as sloppy as when you're kind of mixing a base texture with the runic texture and a wizard texture. So anyway, I always harp on that, but it's important because it kind of separates the experienced mappers from the noobs. And so you want to get out of noob territory as soon as possible. Anyway, so you have your theme and you have the beginnings of your texture WOD. The next step would be to sketch things out. Now you can do it on paper or you can do it very roughly in the editor with just big blocky shapes. These are from John Romero, and this is from Andrew Yoder, also known as McLoganog. And here's the sketch for the level I'm working on. And you can see it's nowhere near as detailed or as beautiful as some of those other sketches. But I just wanted a kind of a basic idea of just kind of a direction to go in. I call it a jumping off point. I don't sketch things out in minute detail. And a lot of times I don't even do this step on paper. I'll just jump into the editor. And a lot of people do that. So you can skip this step if you don't feel comfortable doing it. But if it helps you, go for it. Before we move on from the sketching phase, I just want to let people know that, some people do 3D sketches in Trench Broom with just large brushes to kind of get the basic shapes. Other people use programs like SketchUp or Photoshop. I've seen people use Photoshop where you see an overhead view of the map. There's all kinds of ways of sketching a map. One time I even wrote a script for what the player experiences. I just wrote down a kind of a screenplay for just the opening moments of the map, and it really kind of helped me set the scene and get in the flow. So that might be something you can try as well. So after sketching comes floors. This is a crucial part of the process, and you can compile your map just run QBSP on it, no lighting or anything or viz, and just run around the map and check out the scale. It's really important to get this right and to kind of get a feel for how long it takes to travel from A to B and all that. Now, this map I'm working on now is a little different, so I've got these large structures as kind of anchor points where the player will end up, and I have to copy and paste these because I'm kind of short for time. And then the floors will connect these areas, these kind of set piece areas together. As you continue to build things, more ideas will kind of present themselves to you. It's very improvisational, this point. And this is one of the most fun parts of making maps for me, anyway. So this gives you more of an idea of what I mean by floors, because the map I'm working on currently isn't the greatest example. A little bit later, it starts to take shape. This is the same map with the walls in place. Walls are the next step in my process. I basically take the floors, I've got the path all set, and I just extrude out using the floors as kind of a guide for where the walls should be. And of course there's changes and things like that. This map is a little bit different though, as you'll see. At this point, I've added a barrier around the map just to kind of give myself some boundaries and just visualize how things are looking from the sides. And it's pretty slapped together. It's pretty sloppy. But in this speed map, the walls are just the cavern here that you can see. And I've blocked them out with 256 by 256 boxes. And later I'll pull them and twist them into kind of more rock-like shapes. All right, so I've done a lot of work since the last time I recorded last night. And now I'm working right now on the next step, which is basically gates and the interactive aspects of the map. Now, when I say gates, I don't mean literal gates. I mean things like locked doors and cut-off areas and keys that are kind of separated from the player that they've got to find. Anything that will stop the progress of the player and wait for them to do something. That's what I mean by gates. Things like elevators, doors, things that, secret doors, things like that are in this step. All right, so I have the basic path down. So it's kind of a button hunt. There's 5 buttons in total. One's up here. Got one right at the start so the player can see what's going on. Then I've got one kind of down here. 4th one is here. And then there's another one down in this pathway down here. So there's 5, and then what happens is that will unlock the cage to the gold key. Then you take back the gold key to the center, and this opens the exit. The steps so far, I've chosen a theme, sketched out my map, done the floors and the walls, and I have all my gates and interactivity finished. And now it's time to start focusing on monsters and gameplay. So we'll start with gameplay in the next video. Until then, thanks for hanging in there. We'll see you in part 2.